Welcome to the InfoMullet YouTube channel. If you enjoy this content, please like or share. And if you'd like to support the InfoMullet by becoming a mulleteer, visit us on Patreon. We appreciate your support. This is where we were last week. That was the iceberg, right? The disparate amount of the funnel that funnels more police interactions in per 10,000, which then results in having more interactions of which that relatively constant rate of hospitalization or fatality. But a lot of questions came up. What's driving that? What is causing arrests and stops? There's all of the common arguments. Is it criminality? Is it racial disparity and who's making phone calls to the police, and that's causing more interactions? So today, to go deeper along the iceberg, I'm going to try and dive into that a little bit and break that apart. The first thing, one of the first questions we got is this arrests and stops because of 911 calls? I've seen a lot of speculation. Well, maybe there's more blacks committing crime and getting 911 called them, or some people are saying, look, whites are racist. That happens. Maybe they're calling the police unfairly on blacks more often, and that's leading to higher interactions, the 911 calls. Well, we need to break policing down into two kinds of policing. There's reactive policing, which is the response. That's the response to a 911 call. And then there's something called proactive policing, which is not answering a specific 911 or dispatch call. And we're going to start with the reactive policing, because I think this is where people gravitated. And the data here, we have, it's very hard to tell, for example, the question of, well, are white people just calling the police more on black? We know about incidents. We see it on Twitter. We see it on YouTube, videos. But it's hard to tell systemically. And does that result in this? Well, one of the challenges of getting this data is most times 911 calls aren't taking the race of the caller. So it's unusual to find good data that lets us know, like, hey, whites disproportionately call on blacks, and that's unfair because it's targeting the police on them. But we do have research, and this is just recent as of earlier this year, that came out. And there's a link. Again, all the links in this are below in the things. There were 2 million 911 calls that they're able to study in 2 cities. And what they looked at was, and these cities, these 911 calls were dispatched to 4 different kinds of city. One was predominantly black, over 80% population black. One was predominantly white, over 80% white. One was predominantly Hispanic, over 80% Hispanic, and one was mixed. 2 million records across all 4 cities that this one common police department was being dispatched to. Well, first of all, they found out that white officers used force 60% more than black officers on average. This is across all calls. And they found that was significant, to note that there was a systemic disparity in the propensity to use force just by the race of the police officer themselves. And they suggest that there may be a difference in who is attracted to the police force between whites and blacks. But the important thing for that question of sort of reactive policing, what's driving this iceberg, they were able to look at what was the use of force relative between the race of the officer who responded and the predominant race of the city from which the call emerged. Remember, we can't track every individual call by race, but we know what 911 calls emerged from a predominantly black city, and we can kind of take as a proxy that it's, those are probably black callers. Likewise, if it's a white city, we can kind of, it's a rough proxy. It's not perfect. But what was interesting is that white and black officers used force at the same rate when dispatched to a predominantly white city. But when white officers were dispatched to a predominantly black city, they used gun force 5 times more often. And this is true even in Hispanic cities. When white officers were dispatched to Hispanic cities, they also used force more disparately. But what they found is when black and Hispanic officers were dispatched to white cities, they didn't use force disproportionately, and no one used force disproportionately when it was a mixed city. So it was pretty clear from this reactive policing standpoint that when the interaction of officer of a certain race is dispatched, and in this case whites, is dispatched to a predominantly black or Hispanic city, they're more likely to use force. Now, this isn't true of the entire US. These were 2 million records over 4 cities in a certain area, so we can't draw more than that, but that's a pretty big data set. And again, white officers were more likely to use force when dispatched to a predominantly black or Hispanic. No one was likely to use more force when they went to a white city or a mixed city. So I think there's something to say about this reactive policing, that it's not necessarily whites are calling police on more blacks, but when whites are dispatched to black or Hispanic areas, they're more likely to use force. Thanks for watching the video. Hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to follow the InfoMullet, visit us on Facebook or Twitter. And if you'd like notifications when we post new video content, click on the red subscribe button below the video. If you've ever wanted to become a mulleteer and support the InfoMullet, visit us on Patreon. We appreciate the support.